I thought this was going to be terrible, but it actually works great and it's super easy to do. I'll show you how in this video. AMD has accidentally posted online a version of FSR4 that uses int8 instructions instead of FP8 instructions. Why should you care? If you have an RX 7000 or 6000 series GPU, you can now use a version of FSR4. Now, there's still some questions regarding is the image quality as good as the FP8 version or the performance? And honestly, maybe we'll even have a chance to look at that today, but what really matters is this looks better than FSR3, markedly so, to the point where you can use it at much more aggressive settings with better image quality, and you still gain performance over native, which is what I was really gonna unsure about when I initially saw this posted. This is so cool. So this is basically all you need to do. You need to get the version of the DLL that has been compiled with the int8 version of FSR4. And then you need a way to get it into games that don't even have FSR4 support, which you can do through Optiscaler. So step one is going to be download both of these. Now this has made older AMD GPUs so much more interesting, which means you should check out Jawa.gg. This is a place where you can buy, sell, and upgrade between gamers, and honestly getting good deals on the used market, so much better than buying a new GPU. And my main problem with older 6000, 7000 series GPUs in the past has been the lack of a machine learning based upscaler like FSR4 or DLSS. Well, now these are so much more interesting, and I can get you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10. A huge thank you to Jawa for sponsoring today's video. And you can get entire pre-built systems, find exactly what you're looking for with their PC Finder. You can search for PCs that'll get a certain performance level in a certain game, or have a certain CPU, GPU fit in a certain price range, or you can even shop by the theme, making sure you get something that fits your room, your identity, your style. And honestly, how are you going to fund the upgrade if you're short on cash? You can turn your gear into extra cash at Jawa. The most convenient route, maximum convenience, is selling your CPU or GPU directly to Jawa for instant cash. Get an instant offer today, clicking this button. But if you want to set your own price, create your own listing, maybe even create your own side business selling PC parts on Jawa, you can do that as well. There's so many great reviews, so many happy customers, and again, I can save you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10. Follow the sponsored link in the video description and or pinned comment. Like I said, step one is download this file. Step two is download the latest version of Optiscaler. I'll put links in my video descriptions. Make sure, again, just grab that latest version, download that, and maybe you already have Optiscaler, in which case you've already got that, and I'll show you how to put these together into a game, get FSR4 up and running. Once you've downloaded Optiscaler, it's in a zipped file, so you'll want to extract all, or you could create a new folder and copy things in, and there you go. Now you want to be working with the extracted version that's not zipped, and the next thing that you're going to want to do is go to where you downloaded that modified DLL file. Well, not really modified, but the one AMD didn't want getting out there. Now, Optiscaler has its own FSR DLL in it already, but it's not the version with this int8 support. So you can just take that, copy and paste, or just drop it in here, and you can then replace the file in the destination folder. Again, the destination folder is the Optiscaler folder. The next thing we need to do is install Optiscaler into whatever game you want to use it in. So how do we install this into a game? Well, first you have to go to where the game is installed. By the way, quick caution, I wouldn't put this into any game that has anti-cheat, just in case that flags it and gets you a ban. You've been fairly warned. Anyway, so I'm going to go to where my Steam games are installed. By default, that would be local disk C, program files x86. Scroll down to Steam, click on that. Scroll down to Steam apps, click on that. Click on Common, and then you've got your games installed. Now, you may have changed where your Steam games are installed to, especially if you have multiple hard drives, etc. Anyway, here I'm going to go to Cyberpunk 2077 as a example game we could do. Now, whatever game you're going into, with Optiscaler, it's important to put the files in the correct spot. Now, games will have an exe to launch the game in their game folder, but sometimes the one you see in the initial game folder isn't the one that actually launches the game. So oftentimes you'll want to go into where it says bin or binaries, open that up. Here we'll go to bin x64. And then this is where we actually want to be installing it to, where it actually has the exe for Cyberpunk that will run the game. Now, I'm going to take everything from my Optiscaler folder. I'm just going to go ahead and copy all of those things, and I'm going to paste them into the folder that I says has the Cyberpunk exe in it, or whatever other game you're wanting to do. If it wants you to replace something, you can go ahead and replace those things because it's replacing them with the Optiscaler versions. Now, in the Optiscaler files, there will be a setup for Windows. It'll be a batch file, and that's the one that you want to run once it's already in the game folder that you want to run it in. You don't want to run this in the Optiscaler folder originally. You want to do this after you've copied the files into the game that you want to install Optiscaler in. So we do this. Then you want to choose a file name. Occasionally, some things can conflict with this if they've already been used by something else. Like I think I've heard that Reshade uses DXGI, so that can cause some people some issues. I'm going to use that because I don't have Reshade installed, but you could use a different name here. So I'm going to press number 1 and hit enter. And then it says, am I using an AMD or NVIDIA GPU here? I am using an AMD GPU, so I'll press number 1. And then will I try to use DLSS inputs? I might actually do that because in certain games, I think I've heard that Optiscaler can sometimes work better that way. The point is I want to have the option, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and then enjoy. Press any key to continue. It's really that simple. Next, just launch the game. Notice when I start up the game in the bottom left corner of the screen, you're seeing it says Optiscaler. That's an indication that you installed it correctly, so we can feel good about that. Also, if you press the insert button on your keyboard, you should get the Optiscaler menu. More on that in a second. First, let's actually get into a game. Also, I'm going to be monitoring performance with AMD's own software overlay. You can hit Control-Shift-O to toggle that on and off. For monitoring frame rate numbers. Actually, for now, let's get that out of the way just for a second. Let's get into a game, and then let's actually look at image quality, because there's two things that are important for whether or not this is worthwhile. One is the image quality better than what we had previously? And then the other thing is, are we actually gaining or at least not losing performance compared to like running the game natively? So those are a couple of things that we're going to want to take a look at. So, all right, first, let's get an idea of what graphics settings we're running at here. So this is 1440p, and we are at currently no resolution scaling. I think I'm on the otherwise ultra preset here without ray tracing. And so this is native 1440p. Now, even at native 1440p, the TAA image isn't perfect, and we can also get an idea of what our performance is here with the overlay. You can see we're getting about 85-ish frames per second. It kind of changes as cars drive by, etc. And actually, if you look ahead of us at that like transparency, like hologram for the fast travel location, you can see that that actually flickers a little bit with the native TAA implementation. So that's kind of what we're doing at native resolution. Now what we're going to do is kick on FSR4 to get an idea of what that looks like. Now I'm going to go super aggressive all the way to performance mode, but also we can take a look at like what's our frame rate. So now I'm at like 118, 120 frames per second. Again, it varies a little bit as cars drive by, etc. But you can see that that sign in front of us looks noticeably worse. You can also look at the palm tree branches kind of above my head right now. They're really shimmery and flickery because performance mode upscaling is difficult. It's rendering the game with a 1440p output. This is a 720p internal rendering resolution, so it's really difficult to do properly. But it did improve performance significantly. We're up to nearly 120 frames per second, kind of bounces between about like 115 and 120. Now, here's the big deal. Is the FSR4 option going to look better, and is it going to still perform better than at least the native performance was, enough so that, again, it's still kind of worth using over native? So here's how the Optiscaler menu is going to work. We're going to press the Insert button on the keyboard, and then now you need to select the game upscaler that you're using. Because what Optiscaler does is it takes the upscaling inputs that the game would normally be using, so it needs to have DLSS or FSR or XeSS available. It takes those inputs and then changes the upscaler it actually runs through. So here we're going to use the FSR3 input. I'm going to click Change Upscaler. Things kind of glitch out for a second as it's making this change, but then it settles down. And now notice that it's using the FSR4.0.2 right here. That means we have now changed to the FSR4 pathway. And if you're wondering, did it work? It should just be immediately obvious to your eyes right now. Do you see above me right now, we no longer have unstable shimmering on those palm tree branch style foliage. If you look at the transparent, like fast travel sign hologram, that now looks super stable. In general, a lot of the shimmering and weirdness in the background is gone. It looks stable now. Now, what happened to the frame rate number? Looks like we're down to, bouncing between 110 to 115 FPS, rather than in the 115 to 120 range. So this is certainly not as fast as using FSR3. It's slightly less performant, but it is definitely way more performant. Definitely a way better image quality than what we were getting. Meaning, using FSR4 performance at a 1440p output is actually something I might consider doing if I wanted the extra frame rate badly enough. It's still not perfect, because remember, this is a 720p internal rendering resolution. So I might go a little less aggressive, but it's at least reasonable image quality that for some people might be worth, might even be worth using that aggressively. Whereas again, before we were using this, when we were just using the FSR3 pathway, which again, I can switch back to that, you can see that the image quality is really quite noticeably shimmery and bad. Like just standing here staring at these palm tree branches, you can see all of these shimmering going on in this foliage. Like this looks pretty bad to the point where using FSR3 or 2 on a 1440p monitor, I would personally say maybe the quality mode if you absolutely had to. Maybe the quality mode. If I switch to the quality mode, the internal rendering resolution is a lot higher. So, the image quality is a little better because it has more pixels to work with. But you can still see some instability in the palm trees and things like that, even at the quality mode. Now, let's take a look. So we're getting around 94-ish frames per second right here using the FSR3 quality mode in this particular scene. And we can switch over to FSR4.0.2. I'm going to click the Change Upscaler button. Again, glitches out for a second as it applies it. Then I'm going to hit Insert again to get rid of this menu. And looks like we're at about 84 frames per second at the quality mode. So certainly not as much performance as we had using FSR3 quality mode, noticeably so. But it is definitely improving the image quality. I'm not seeing all that shimmering weirdness. And even in motion, well, in motion there's a little more breakup. But it's certainly still better than what we were getting with FSR3. We can do another comparison with that if I switch back to FSR 3.1.5 here. Again, that's just messed up even standing still, but then scrolling side to side also not looking great. Now, it is important to note, though, that what if we switch back to native resolution here? Because you're not gaining as much performance using the quality mode. So I'm actually curious if FSR4 is actually much faster than native. So let's take a look. So we switch back to native resolution in this particular scene, and it looks like we're bouncing between about 79 to 80 FPS. So it's bouncing around 79 to 80, standing still here looking at this. And again, if we go ahead and switch over to, let's see, I'm going to go and use the quality mode upscaling with the FSR3. We can see that our 80 FPS turns into roughly 94. But again, if I switched using the FSR4 pathway, performance is only slightly better than native. Like here I'm getting like 83 frames per second. So it's looking to me like if you were just going to use quality level upscaling, it's only slightly better performance than native, so may or may not be super worth using. But I think the main thing is you can now use more aggressive upscaling. Also, that could depend on like what graphic settings we're using, what resolution you're using, what GPU you're using. So there's certainly some additional testing that I think would be worth doing here, and maybe getting some side-by-side footage. So I think what I'm gonna do next is get some side-by-side footage and edit it together, and then we can kind of look at that as a final thought section on using this on RDNA3. Okay, I've now run a bunch of the built-in benchmarks of Cyberpunk using the 7800 XT. I've ran it at 1440p and 4K at FSR performance, balanced, and quality, and native TAA, so we can check out the performance differences. Now, keep in mind in side-by-side footage like this that if you're seeing screen tearing, I'm capturing a 60 FPS video at footage that is not locked to 60 FPS. So screen tearing, don't judge that on the image quality. However, if you do see scenes like shimmering and aliasing and things like that, we can also use this for some side-by-side comparison of image quality. Now, a couple of things that we've got going here is that the native footage is on the left, FSR3 built into the game is in the middle, and then the FSR4 int8 version on the far right, and then we can see their performance in frame rate as well as percentage difference, where we set the native as the 100% baseline right here. I'm going to kind of slide down small out of the way here, and we can go ahead and run the footage and see what we see. So it's looking like on 1440p ultra native TAA, we get 96 frames per second at through the built-in benchmark tool here. Whereas FSR3 in its performance mode gets us all the way up to 135 frames per second, which is a 41% improvement. That being said, if you're watching the footage here like I am, there's certainly a noticeable loss to image quality when you look at the native and then look at the middle in FSR3. Like the foliage there is very, very shimmery. Whereas on the right, where we're looking at FSR4 in the int8 modded version here, we are seeing that it's a lot more stable. I think we're about to see the fence line here a bit, which is more stable than some of the characters walking by. Now, we're only getting 1/3 of the screen, so it's not perfect for judging all the image quality, but it's certainly better looking on the far right. And it's running at 129 frames per second, which is still 34% faster than native and a little bit slower than the FSR3 version, but I think the image quality makes that worth it. Now here I'm trying less aggressive upscaling. This is the balanced mode. So on the left, we're still seeing the native TAA version, which is still running at 96 frames per second, as it has been all along. However, in the middle now, we have FSR3 balanced mode, and it looks a little better than the performance mode did, but it's still having a lot of the same kind of image quality issues that we saw with the performance mode, just less extreme. Again, as you see the plants right here, they're very shimmery, which is corrected on the far right. We're seeing the FSR4 int8 balanced mode. And again, this is balanced mode now on both. So the FSR3 is running at 120 frames per second, which is 25% faster than the native resolution. And the FSR4 int8 version is running 114 frames per second, which is 19% faster than native. So here we're seeing basically once again that while it's not quite as fast as FSR3, I think the image quality makes it worth it, and it's still noticeably faster than native. Now, if we go down to the quality mode, I'm actually seeing even FSR3 not give a huge performance boost here, only putting it 10% faster than native, and then FSR4 int8 version is only 6% faster than native. Now, one thing I want to comment on that is that depending on what game you're playing and what graphics preset you're at, the amount of performance uplift you get from upscaling can be different. And I've noticed that Cyberpunk's Ultra mode doesn't necessarily give the huge performance boost from quality level upscaling that I see in some other games. So this is certainly something that would warrant further investigation in other games, where I think you would get a larger performance boost from just using quality level upscaling. But this is how Cyberpunk behaves, and that is normal. I've seen this in other testing where, on the Ultra preset in particular, I think if we were on a ray tracing preset, even in Cyberpunk, I think we'd see a larger performance boost. So just something to keep in mind here as we're doing this testing. But what I'm switching to now is 4K resolution. So on the left, we're still at native TAA, but it's now the ultra preset on the 4K output. And we can see that overall frame rates are a lot lower, only getting 41 FPS now by the end of the built-in benchmark run. Whereas in the middle, with FSR3 performance mode, we're hitting 75 frames per second, which is 83% faster than the native TAA. Now, FSR4 with its int8 version modded in is running a lot faster than native here at 68 frames per second, and that is a 66% advantage over native. And again, while the side-by-side footage is only a third of the screen each, it's hard sometimes to see all of the details. I think you can still see a noticeable improvement compared to the FSR3 performance version. And in some ways, certain things actually seem a little less blurry than native TAA to my eyes, so it's definitely putting up a good fight, although I think the palm tree branches do look more stable with the native. Now, what if we reduced how aggressive we were on the upscale to the balanced mode? That's what we're looking at here. The left-hand side of the screen is still the native TAA, still running at 41 frames per second. And the middle is still FSR3, but now it's the balanced preset, so not quite as aggressive on the upscale, and we're still seeing some of the image breakup and stuff like that we tend to get with FSR3. But we're getting 61 frames per second running the FSR3 balanced mode, putting it 49% faster than native. Whereas FSR4 with its int8 version isn't quite as fast. It's hitting 57 frames per second, which is still a 39% improvement over native. So certainly a noticeable improvement over native. And the image quality is, I think, noticeably better than FSR3 Balance. Now, I'm on a 4K display. If you're on like a phone or something like that, you can pinch on mobile to zoom in if you want to look at some of the details and all of that. But on a 4K display, I can still very noticeably see the image quality improvement on the right-hand side of the screen compared to the middle. Lastly, I wanted to check out backing off to the quality mode, so the least aggressive upscale, so also the least performance boost. Here we're seeing FSR3 hit 52 frames per second at quality mode, which is 27% faster than the 41 FPS that we're getting at the native TAA. Whereas FSR4 in its int8 version is hitting 49 frames per second, which is 20% faster than native. So still noticeably faster than native, and I would say still noticeably better looking than FSR3 in its quality mode. Although FSR3 in its quality mode is now having less obvious issues because it has a higher internal rendering resolution. Again, on an actual 4K display, looking closely at it, I can still see differences, and I do think the FSR4 int8 version is still noticeably better. It is very, very usable here. So that's the performance testing that I've got for us today. Now, here's my final thoughts for today's video, but I think part of that is that I think this warrants additional testing. So what we can see is that at least on the 7800 XT, FSR4's int8 version is absolutely worth using. It's pretty simple to mod in. Again, be wary of any game with anti-cheat. And it offers notable image quality improvements. Maybe I'll just play the video in the background again while, while I give my final thoughts. We're getting the notable image quality improvements. Performance is definitely better than native, which was not necessarily going to be the case, considering if the hardware is not really up to the task, your upscale process might take longer than the amount of time you gain from reducing the internal resolution. So it's really good to see this. Little bit slower than FSR3, but absolutely worth using. Now, the additional thoughts I have is, okay, so I think this would be better to test in a bunch of games rather than just this one. It's just the amount of time I have for today's video. But also, there's the RDNA3 issue, so RX 6000 series GPUs. So that's another thing I want to test out. I've researched online and people are saying it does work, but if you're on the newer drivers, you get tons of ghosting issues. And so it requires running back to an older driver version to get the best experience. So I'm interested in an upcoming video at maybe looking at the 6800 XT, which is generally just a little slower than the 7800 XT, but I'm curious how it runs FSR4. Is it going to still be fast enough to be worth using? And also, again, how does it actually look? Because like I said, I've heard about issues with it on the latest driver version. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. This warrants additional testing on 6000 series GPUs, as well as on maybe weaker GPUs from both generations. Because the 7800 XT is pretty powerful. Is this still worth using on something a lot weaker? And if it works on the 6000 series, would a card like the RX 6600 still get decent performance boost? So I'm interested in the comment section. Why don't you guys let me know the kind of experience that you're getting out of this? And then, like I said, look out for me in future videos, at least testing out like a 6800 XT in this in Cyberpunk like this. Probably, like I said, probably having to go back to older drivers. I might look into those image quality issues that I've heard reported, and maybe get back to you on how it runs compared to the 7800 XT. But overall, this is really exciting because that was one of my main drawbacks of the older AMD GPUs. And like I said, it makes them a lot more exciting. You can check out Jawa.gg as a great place to buy, sell, upgrade used hardware. These makes these older cards a lot more exciting. Again, thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. And remember, you can use code OWEN10 for $10 off your first purchase. Hope all of you have an excellent day.